Senator, it's hard to find two more pieces of rancid commie trash than the Washington Post and the New York Times, and yet both of those publications have put out calls for Joe Biden not to run. Pretty eye-opening in about the last 48 hours. Do you think Democrats are done with this guy?
Not yet. They're thinking about it. They're starting to get a little bit nervous. They're also nervous because he's older than Methuselah. And he can't seem to find his shoes in the morning. And, you know, I would say he's Mr. Magoo, but I've been reminded that unless you're almost as old as Methuselah, you don't remember who Mr. Magoo was. But his mental diminishment is serious. And so I do think some Democrats are getting nervous about that. And so are they pulling the escape hatch yet? Not entirely. But I think the risk is not zero that in the next 10 months, they jettison Joe Biden and try to parachute someone else in at the last minute. And I think the biggest risk of that happening would be at the Democrat convention next summer. And I think there's a real possibility, depending on the degree of legal peril Joe is in, depending on the degree of evidence that is piled up against him, and depending on just how diminished his mental state continues, I think there's some real chance at the convention next summer they try to jettison Joe.
Oh, that is quite a thing. So I couldn't even imagine Democrats and the knives being out with each other if that happens at a convention. Conventional wisdom, pardon the pun, would say the vice president would be the likely one, but nobody likes Dome. Nobody likes this woman at all. Do they slip Gavin Newsom in there? I'm honestly curious, just the political hypothetical here. Who do they try to get on that stage?
Oh, look, I think without Joe Biden, I think the top four contenders are Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Pete Buttigieg, and Elizabeth Warren. I think in an open primary, I actually think Elizabeth Warren wins that. I think she is the closest to the id of the current Democrat Party. And I actually think Elizabeth Warren could very well have won last time if Bernie Sanders hadn't been in there as well. And Bernie and Elizabeth split the crazy commie section of the Democrat Party, which gave an avenue for Joe Biden to come in there. Look, I also think there's some real risk. It is a complicated thing for Democrats to pick among those four, and it could be a really nasty fight. I think there's some real possibility Democrats try to parachute a Michelle Obama in there. And that would be the one candidate they could pretty easily tell the other four, sit down, she's going to do this instead.
I have great news. If you enjoyed that, I have a YouTube channel you can subscribe to. Whatever I do, it'll be right there on YouTube. So go subscribe today.